I stumbled upon the documents before she uttered a single syllable, arranged with meticulous care on the kitchen table, positioned precisely between my steaming coffee mug and the partially dissected avocado she was well aware I despised. That was her signature, methodical, with a subtle undercurrent of spite. She entered the room, hands still damp, rubbing them against a faded dish towel, her gaze fixed downward as if the floor held more interest than the moment unfolding. Without preamble, she delivered her line. I want a divorce. No tentative we should talk, no gentle I've been struggling. Just those 4 words, sharp and final, as if she were severing a utility bill rather than a marriage. I lifted my mug, took a deliberate sip, and let my eyes drift to the papers, studying them as if they were a puzzle I'd already solved. That sounds fine, I replied, my tone even almost tender, like I was agreeing to a casual outing. No bite, no edge, just calm acceptance. She didn't expect that. I could sense the shift in her, a flicker of unease she masked with practiced finesse. One eyebrow arched, perhaps anticipating the predictable script. Protests, pleas, a tearful monologue about fate and fixing things. Instead, I reached for the pen and held it out to her. Do I need to sign every page or just the last one? That's when her composure wavered. Her head snapped up, lips parting in a faint, bewildered gasp, as if I'd derailed the scene she'd rehearsed in her mind. You're not even going to ask why? She pressed, her voice tinged with disbelief. I leaned back in my chair, letting the wood creak beneath me. No, I said simply, and I meant it. I didn't need her explanation. I'd already pieced it together, not through grand revelations but through the quiet accumulation of clues. The rhythm of our life had been off for months, a discordant hum I couldn't ignore. The scent of perfume that didn't belong to her clinging to her coat, the unexplained hotel charge on the statement she thought I'd overlook, the whiff of unfamiliar cologne buried in the laundry basket beneath her leggings. Small fractures, easy to dismiss if you weren't paying attention. But I always paid attention. I gathered those fragments like evidence, storing them silently until they formed a picture I didn't need her to confirm. So I didn't ask. I signed each page with the same steady hand I'd once used to tally our monthly expenses, my signature flowing across the lines without hesitation. When I finished, I slid the folder back to her, closing it like I was done browsing a catalog. She stood there, momentarily unmoored, then managed a curt nod. Well, okay then, she muttered, turning on her heel and leaving the kitchen as if she'd misplaced something she couldn't name. She didn't realize it yet, but she'd stepped into a snare of her own making, and I had no intention of pulling her back. She thrived on attention, always had. It wasn't resentment speaking, just observation, as natural as noting the weather. So it didn't shock me when, exactly 3 days later, she orchestrated her pity party, a carefully curated brunch with her loyal trio. Amanda, the perpetually single connoisseur of overpriced Cabernet, Kelly, whose discretion was as reliable as a paper umbrella in a storm, and Heather, the oldest friend, possibly the only one who still recalled her unpolished past, before the injections and the polished social media facade. They convened at that absurd downtown spot with its overpriced beet salads and faux rustic decor. Details I pieced together from Amanda's inevitable story post, a tower of mimosas framed like a crime scene photo. I watched it unfold from afar, folding my workout gear into a duffel bag. A faint smile tugging at my lips as I noted how swiftly she'd shifted from spouse to storyteller. She leaned into the performance, oversized sunglasses perched like a shield, her voice trembling just enough for effect. He didn't even try to save us. 19 years and he just smiled, signed and walked away. Amanda gasped, hand to her chest as if someone had collapsed mid-sip. Are you serious? He didn't say a word. She shook her head, savoring the moment. Not one question. Not even why. Like I was nobody to him. Kelly, ever the dramatist, leaned in with wide eyes. That's cold-blooded. Who does that? Heather stayed quiet, stirring her straw through the ice in her glass, her gaze narrowing slightly. I'd always suspected she saw more than she let on, and the way she tilted her head suggested she sensed something simmering beneath the theatrics. Because here's the reality. She didn't want sympathy, she wanted leverage. She'd cashed in her chips too soon, betting on a messy, loud unraveling. Divorce is chaos, a storm of emotion and noise, but when the person you leave doesn't flail or fight, when they vanish like mist in sunlight, it shifts the narrative. People start to wonder, Whispers take root. Asterisk maybe it wasn't that straightforward. Maybe there's more to it. Asterisk meanwhile, I was orchestrating my own quiet departure. No fanfare, no grand gestures, just calculated steps. I didn't strip the house bare. I took only what was mine, items I'd chosen or earned, things with weight beyond their utility. I left the gaudy mirror she'd insisted to find us, the novel she'd never cracked open, the Le Creuset pot from our wedding that gathered dust after 2 uses. But I kept the note she'd slipped into my briefcase on our 3rd anniversary, back when her attention still lingered on me. Not for nostalgia, for strategy. It might prove useful someday. She watched the house hollow out, day by day like sand slipping through her fingers. After every yoga class or vague networking dinner, she'd return to find another empty drawer, another silent corner, and still, I offered no explanation, no confrontation. She'd assumed I'd crumble without her gravitational pull, never suspecting I'd already slipped its orbit. By the end of the 2nd week, I was gone, no heated exchange, no tearful goodbye, just a clean break. I severed every tether. New phone number, erased online presence, mail rerouted to an anonymous box. Even the utilities flipped to her name without a whisper. The kitchen speakers no longer hummed with my playlists. I'd scrubbed myself from our shared existence, pixel by pixel, and that's what unraveled her. Not the split itself, but my erasure. She'd braced for chaos, for late-night rants or desperate pleas to her friends. Instead, she got silence, and silence isn't just stillness. It's a force. I settled into a sparse apartment across the lake, high up where the air felt lighter, the doors closing with a satisfying hush. No one knew me there, and I preferred it that way. The concierge was trained to deflect, especially when a woman in yoga gear showed up, voice edged with urgency, claiming she was my wife. She tried, I knew she would. She called my old office, only to find I'd gone remote, tethered to a new contract through a different company. She pinged my gym acquaintances, but they were just faces in a crowd, not confidants. She even swallowed her pride and contacted my mother, a desperate move given their mutual disdain. My mom's response was a masterpiece. Maybe if you'd cared for him half as much as you do your spin classes, he'd still be around. That had to burn. She'd always ruled her social sphere like a tactician, bending every story to cast herself as the wronged heroine. But you can't shape a tale when the other half of it simply exits the frame. The text started then, tentative at first. Hey, can we maybe talk? This feels too rushed. Silence for me. Can we at least agree on what to tell people? It's confusing for the kids, our friends. We had no children, but she wielded the word like a blade, hoping it'd pierce. Nothing. Then an email, subject line closure, which I archived unopened. There's strength in not responding. Not vengeance but control. I could picture her pacing the house, rifling through cabinets, checking the closet again, searching for some trace. A scrap of paper, a stray sock she could fling aside in a fit of theater. But I'd left nothing, not even a lingering scent. That's when the quiet began to gnaw at her, louder than any argument. Silence has a way of bending your certainties, fraying the edges of what you thought you knew. And that's where I wanted her. Not furious, not shattered, but off balance. Heather didn't broach it immediately. She let it fester, her style patient and deliberate. But eventually she couldn't resist. It was over a leisurely Saturday lunch, midway through a kale salad and her second glass of Chardonnay, when she stirred her drink and dropped it casually. I think I saw him last week. Rebecca stiffened, fork hovering midair. Where? Heather shrugged, slow and measured. That new place in Canlis. Rebecca scoffed. Please, he'd never go there. He thinks anything with a sommelier is a con. Heather's eyes narrowed slightly. That's what I figured too, but it was him. Black shirt, new watch, looked good actually. Better than I've seen him in years. Rebecca's laugh caught, jagged and forced. Was he alone? Heather paused, and that hesitation shifted the air. No, she said softly. He was with someone. Rebecca leaned back too quickly, wine sloshing against the glass. Who? I don't know her, Heather replied. Stunning though, quietly so. Expensive taste. Dark hair, navy dress, pearl earrings. They were in a corner booth, drinking wine, laughing. Rebecca's voice sharpened. Laughing. Heather nodded. She touched his wrist when he got up like it was nothing. Rebecca's lips pressed into a thin line. You're mistaken. He's not the type. Heather reached into her bag, pulled out her phone, and after a few taps, tilted the screen toward her. I wasn't going to show you, but you should see it. The photo wasn't crisp, but it was unmistakable. Him in profile, smiling in a way she hadn't witnessed in ages, shoulders loose, alive. The woman's hand rested lightly on his wrist. Not possessive, just present. Rebecca handed the phone back with rehearsed poise, but her eyes betrayed her. They flinched. He didn't even tell me he was seeing someone, she muttered, swirling her tepid wine. Heather's response was gentle but firm. You're divorced. He doesn't owe you that. Rebecca didn't answer, just stared past her. Out the window at a couple strolling with their dog, their ease twisting something bitter inside her. Not quite pain, not sadness, something ugly or older. Envy. And she loathed it. He wasn't supposed to move on with elegance. He was meant to fade into mediocrity. Date someone bland, soften around the edges, ramble about IPAs and landscaping. Not this. Upscale dinners, sleek watches, a woman who touched him like it mattered. For the first time, she wondered if she'd ever truly known him, or if she just never bothered to look. It started as a distraction. She ditched her book club early, restless from another round of self-help platitudes, and drove aimlessly, a podcast droning in the background. But her hand steered with purpose, guiding her to a shaded street in Bellevue, where she slowed in front of a modern tower, glass and steel, understated wealth etched into its bones. The Perch. She sneered at the name, at its smug exclusivity, and parked across the street, engine off, pretending to scroll her phone. Her eyes, though, kept drifting upward to the 8th floor, where warm light spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows, softened by dark curtains. Then she saw them, two shadows moving in tandem. One was him, unmistakable, pacing with that familiar cadence he used when lost in thought. The other, her no doubt, hair swept up, wine glass in hand, posture flawless even in silhouette. Rebecca's breath hitched as the woman leaned closer, head tipping back in a laugh she hadn't heard in their home in years. The nausea hit hard, not just because he'd moved on, but because of what she saw in that room. Ease, connection, the kind that didn't flare up overnight. It was cultivated, rooted, real. She gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening, her reflection glaring back from the rearview mirror. Tired eyes, faded lipstick, roots peeking through her dye job, blouse creased from the seatbelt. She didn't look like the woman he'd choose now, not against her. She lingered there, nearly 20 minutes, watching him pour more wine, pull out a chair, laugh again, never once glancing toward the street. He didn't know she was there, and worse, he didn't care. 3 days later she broke. After sleepless nights clutching her phone, scouring his dormant LinkedIn, mapping out floor plans of the Perch in her head, she caved. At 11:42 p.m., robe tied too tight, wine glass sweating beside her, she typed into their old text thread, "Can we talk?" She rewrote it half a dozen times, thumb trembling as she hit send. 5 agonizing minutes passed before his reply. What's left to discuss? No warmth, no punctuation, just a blunt, cool wall. She stared at it, willing it to soften, but it didn't. It wasn't malice, it was indifference, and that cut deeper than any insult. She didn't respond. What could she say that wouldn't sound desperate? Instead, she scrolled their history. 19 years of banter, plans, late-night confessions, now ending in that sterile line. The conversation had died long before the papers. She'd just been too busy talking over the silence to notice. The rain came 3 nights later, steady and relentless, the kind that makes you feel judged. She sat outside the Perch again, wipers ticking, no makeup, hair scraped back, raw and unscripted. She told herself it was nothing, just a quick chat to clear the fog. But stepping into the lobby, drenched and unsteady, she hadn't planned beyond the door. "Rebecca Alden," she told the concierge, voice daring him to flinch. "Here for Daniel Alden." He paused, tapping keys with polite detachment. "Mr. Alden didn't mention a visitor tonight." "I'm his wife," she snapped. A flicker crossed his face. Not pity, just recognition. "I'll call up." The weight stretched, her mind racing, him upstairs, barefoot maybe, seeing her name, weighing it. Then, "You can go up. Elevator 3, penthouse level." Her pulse pounded. The ride was eternal. Rain streaking the glass walls, her reflection a stranger, wild-eyed, pale, dripping. His door was ajar. She pushed it open, hit by a wave of amber and sandalwood jazz humming low. He stood by the kitchen, pouring wine unfazed. "You're wet," he said, handing her a towel. Neutral, practical, devastating. She scanned the room. Sleek, intentional, no excess. Then she saw her. A woman on the couch, legs crossed, book in hand, a shadow of elegance. "We were just about to eat," he said, matter of fact. Rebecca's grip tightened on the towel. He turned back to his wine and she saw it, peace. He'd moved on, and she'd stumbled into a life that no longer fit her. The woman glanced up, curious but detached, her face tugging at a memory. College, a dorm, a petty slight Rebecca had buried. "Monica." It clicked. "You don't waste time," she said, voice brittle. He sipped his wine. "You didn't either." Monica raised an eyebrow, amused. "I thought we could talk," Rebecca murmured, shrinking. "We did," he replied. "The day you gave me the papers." Heat climbed her neck. Monica leaned toward him. "Should I step out?" Rebecca froze. Monica Prescott, the girl she'd dismissed decades ago. Now here, poised and pivotal. "You've moved on already," she whispered. "You chose fast," he said. "I honored it." Monica frowned slightly. "Who is this?" Rebecca's breath caught. "This is Rebecca," he said, calm. "My ex-wife." Monica's "oh" was soft, surprised, final. Rebecca backed away, towel in hand, a relic of a life she'd lost. "Did you ever love me?" she asked, voice breaking. He looked at her, not with anger but memory. "I did. Deeply. Every day. Even when it was hard. Even when you made me feel small." She blinked back, tears. "Until you stopped loving us." Not him, not her. The marriage itself, a living thing she'd let die. He stood, not to usher her out, just to move, resolved. She turned, walked to the door and left, the soft click behind her louder than any shout. Downstairs, the rain soaked her through. Upstairs, he resumed his life. Uninterrupted, complete. The house grew emptier. Its silence heavier without him. She found the photo later, him and Monica, golden hour, smiling, real. Sometimes happiness begins exactly where desperation ends. She lay back, the bed vast, the rain relentless, realizing she'd lost not just him, but the woman she might have been.